This is the Church of Christ the Consoler near Ripon in North Yorkshire, a beautiful Victorian Gothic revival church built by William Burgess in the 1870s. Located in the grounds of the nearby Newby Hall, it was commissioned by Lady Mary Viner as a memorial to her son Frederick Viner. He'd been taken hostage by bandits in Greece while travelling with British and Italian tourists, and a ransom had been demanded, which was being raised by Mary back home in England. Sadly, however, during a rescue attempt by Greek troops, Frederick was murdered in April 1870, and the ransom money was instead used to build this church in his memory. It's not an ancient church, and in terms of its history, nothing remarkable ever happened here. But that is until the year of our Lord, 1963. It was during that year, 1963, that the church's vicar, the Reverend Kenneth F. Lord, took a photograph of the altar with plans to produce postcards. When his photo was developed, there appeared to be a sinister apparition standing, looking directly at the camera. The figure in the photo resembles a human form, with the consensus of people believing that it looks like a 16th century monk. Over his face, there's a white shroud, possibly a covering to hide leprosy scarring or some kind of facial disfigurement. However, despite almost every article and book that references this picture, referring to it as a monk, it's worth pointing out that the clothes he's wearing don't resemble any historical monastic habits. It's more of a cloak than a monk's robes. The Church of Christ the Consoler is a relatively new one by British standards. There were no documented cases of hauntings on the site before this photo was taken. In fact, it was just an empty field. Nor have there been any reported claims since. Due to the church's young age, the fact that it hadn't been standing a century when the picture was taken, it's extremely unlikely that any monks would have taken up residence here. In my opinion, the figure looks more like a shrouded corpse than a monk. The figure would also have to have been 8 or 9 foot in height, given the proportions shown in the image, adding another layer of strangeness to this ghost. But let's look into some of the criticisms of the photograph. First of all, many critics point out that this image has all the hallmarks of a double exposure. A double exposure is when 2 or more images are superimposed to give the appearance of one single image. Another one of the main points of contention is that the figure seems to be too perfect to be true, standing there as if intentionally posing for a photograph. Pretty much clear as day. It fits the 19th to 20th century spirit photography pattern of a full-body figure standing slightly off-center, a blurred face, soft edges, and marked by long exposure. The face covering is another aspect that has drawn criticism. It could well be a cloth or pillowcase used to hide the identity of the man that was theoretically posing for this picture. Quite convenient, some would say. Further, the figure would have to be over 8 foot tall based on proportions. A masked man could easily be standing on top of a box hidden under the robes to create such an image. Of course, these criticisms were raised at the time, and so a number of experts went on to analyse the photo. One of these was a man named Vernon Harrison, the former president of the Royal Photographic Society. He examined both the print and the original negative and said that there were no signs of tampering. It should be mentioned, though, that Vernon Harrison, the former president of the Royal Photographic Society, was also a member of the infamous Ghost Club, the world's oldest paranormal investigation society. This naturally raises some suspicions. However, his fellow member and president of the Ghost Club, Peter Underwood, wrote of him, "Only rarely is he unable to suggest a probable, normal explanation." Yet, it wasn't just Vernon Harrison that came to this conclusion. Kodak also examined the negative and likewise affirmed that there was no double exposure. I've also seen sources claim that a BBC team in the 1970s analysed it and again concluded that there was no double exposure or tampering with the photo. But what of the man that took this picture? What of the Reverend Kenneth Lord? There's very little information available on the man, and I cannot find a picture of him, nor can I find a date of birth or death. He seemed to be a man that very much liked his privacy. Yet, I did find a newspaper article dated from the 13th of August, 1967, in the People newspaper, 4 years after his famous picture was taken. Here, Reverend Lord gave an interview which provides some very interesting details on the mysterious photograph. The Reverend is quoted as saying, "I still don't know what to make of it. I did not want to seek publicity, nor do I want people to think it's some sort of ghost. I am not interested in spiritualism or ghost hunting, and am quite frankly skeptical of the picture. All I can truthfully say is that, to my knowledge, I did nothing to interfere with the film. I did not superimpose the figure by accident or design. My first instinct was to throw the negative on the fire and forget about it. Perhaps I should have done so. I certainly hope people won't come flocking to my church in hope of seeing a ghost, but no one has reported seeing anything strange in the church before. It may well be a trick of the light. Whatever it is certainly not a fluke caused in the processing of the film." The article then goes on to say, "The People's chief photographer, Stan Janus, took the negative to the makers of the film, an internationally famous firm. After a series of tests, their laboratories reported the negative had not been interfered with in any way. There was no fault in the emulation layer or with the processing. A double exposure would have been impossible because of a preventative device on Mr. Lord's camera." Another technical expert, employed by Amateur Photographer magazine, confessed, "I spent some years in the laboratory of a photographic manufacturers, sorting out faults such as this, but I can give no logical or convincing explanation of it. The nebulous dark grey outline with what appears to be a white cowl I cannot explain. I must confess, I'm puzzled." So, according to the Reverend, he is not a believer in ghosts, nor does he have any interest. He hopes that people will not come to the church looking for ghosts, and even admits he wished he destroyed the photo because of the attention that it's gained. This really does add to the mystery. By going public with the photograph, he had nothing to gain, but stood to lose the respect of locals and members of the congregation. By all accounts, he was described by parishioners as quiet, scholarly, and not given to sensationalism. He did prefer his solitude and disliked all of the media attention that this photo brought. Why would the Reverend fake this ghost photograph if he wasn't interested in money or publicity? Why would he then downplay it and dismiss the photograph once that attention came his way? If the photograph was faked by him, which many today do suspect, then the question is, why would he do it? He didn't profit, he made no career out of it as a ghost hunter, regretted even publishing it in the first place, and warned against people coming to his church looking for more ghosts. The question as to whether the ghost of Newby Hall is real or fake might well never be answered. It has all the hallmarks of a faked double exposure. In fact, it's the perfect example of one, and yet all contemporary analysis showed that it wasn't. Alas, the truth died with the Reverend, a man we know little about, the man that was there in the church when the photograph was taken. As for the original photo, nobody seems to know its location, making it very hard to analyse again today. Regardless though, it remains as one of the most famous photographs of a ghost in English history.